I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Granville Exempted Village School District Board of Education.
Well, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. What?
If you want me to do it,
Okay.
because they might.
Yeah, okay, I can
Sorry.
add that in.
You have to amend something?
Yeah, we're going to add, first of all, I don't see the student report, so we'll put that right into the, after the commendations. And then Mike would like to update you on the Newark Granville Community Authority meeting that just took place and give you a brief update under a staff report.
Okay.
Okay?
Mhm.
Did we do the roll call?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I'd like to re-welcome everybody.
No.
Oh, we did the Pledge of Allegiance first.
But you were talking through my welcome.
I'm
No,
sorry.
just kidding, sorry. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are you going to?
Yeah, yeah, but, oh, that's before roll call?
Well, I'm just going to cue it up.
Yeah. You can do the roll call.
Dr. Corman.
Here.
Ms. Dees.
Here.
Mr. Janice.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Khan.
Here.
I don't usually use my president's welcome, but I am going to today. First of all, I'd like to welcome Andrew to the board. Happy to have you here. And Happy New Year to everybody. So welcome. It's Board Appreciation Month, so I actually, with my president's welcome, I'm going to give you a little history on the school boards in Ohio. Just in case you wanted to know. That basically, we've been around for a long time, but it was legislation in 1806 to 1821 that first allowed township trustees to establish school districts, but didn't actually require them or require public education. And it was the 1825 law that set the statewide tax that was collected and distributed by county officials. And it was a law that established districts and townships to provide education. But it wasn't until the 1853 Act where the first school boards were established. Districts became separate. Before they were parts of townships, and now they became independent of townships. And in 1853, the Granville voted its first board to govern the Granville Special School District, and there were 3 members to the board. So I just thought that was a lovely piece of information. But I'm going to give you a little trivia question. If you submit your answers to me online, you'll be eligible for a drawing or a prize. So between 1806 and 1825, how many sub-school districts did Granville Township establish within its boundaries?
Do we get credit for the errant apostrophe?
Oh, did I? Where? I was doing this in a little bit of a rush. Where?
It's
Yes. Bonus. And then there were, each sub-district had its own school, each of which had a name. So if you can give the names of 2 or more, there might be a bonus
It has to be
prize.
Granville Township, though, right?
Yes. They were established within the township. Yeah. It's before 1853, so it's these schools, so.
There's a bunch of little schoolhouses out there still, right?
Yeah.
If you kind of know where you look for them, and some of them have been converted and things like that. But
So.
cool.
And I think the only people they educated were the Van Nesses and the Deeds. So.
Since we're in Uniontown,
Oh,
that's why I asked. I know where that school was.
So,
Okay.
just a little bit of fun.
Oh, that's great. Cool.
Yeah,
So,
that's fantastic.
You submit your answers,
Yeah. All right. Well,
be
good.
worth a $5 gift card.
Ooh. Money.
Simon, you have
And
a head
Jeff-
start on this.
Yeah. And Jeff's going to put it in the Granville Louis News, so, you know, anybody
Actually,
can.
Beth will.
Oh, Beth
but-
will.
So it's not just for us. it's
No, so, well,
for
if there had been
other
more
people to
audience
use.
members, it would have been, you
And if you
know.
announce that Granville employees are not eligible, Simon automatically would have won.
That's right.
Like my odds.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to jump right into School Board Recognition Month. And Jen, you kind of talked a little bit about that to kick it off. And this is the new poster from OSBA. It says, "A work of art." And thank you to all the board members. And some of you who have been on the board for a while will get a certificate from OSBA. And then I have a present, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But when I communicate with people around the state, I feel sorry for them because I hear a lot of difficulty in working in board relationships. And I cringe at some of the things that I hear. And then I reflect back and say, wow, I am so blessed to have all of you so committed to what we're trying to do in Granville schools. You know, it takes everybody from governance down to the lowest level of our organization, whatever level that is, probably the superintendency, to make what we do happen. And governance matters, leadership matters, and you've taken some risks. You created board benchmarks when you had 13 excellent signs around this room, which took a leap of faith to say we can continuously improve. You've done things like embrace an innovation process that has brought new and creative ideas that can become actionable items for the students in Granville schools. You've taken on some difficult situations in addressing financial issues. And it's a thankless job, but once a year we get to thank you. And so we are on an instructional journey, and you'll laugh because I started writing your names, and then you'll see that there's now a typed label because you would not be able to read my handwriting. So we are working with a cohort of teachers on understanding what project-based learning is and is not. And we have been really oriented towards this gold standard of project-based learning through the Buck Institute. They have a book that really helps shape people's understanding of what high-quality project-based learning is. And so we're reading this book as a staff in that small cohort that's creating the professional development for next year. And I wanted to present this to the board because of your interest in not just the governance, but the actual academic interest of our students in Granville. So each of you have one of these books. I'm not going to make it a required reading, but if you're so interested, we will definitely have conversations about this over the next year, and honestly, over the next 3 to 5 years. I guarantee you will become experts in project-based learning and what it is from an instructional perspective and an instructional methodology, but also from a tangible benefit to students, because you'll start to see it. And I think we saw some examples of that, even though it wasn't project-based learning, from Granville. It was what our students did with the Uniflow presentation. You know, a perfect example of a real-life situation that takes their learning in the classroom and applies it to something that makes the world a better place. And that's what we're all trying to do. So I want to thank you on behalf of the staff, the community, the students, and anybody else who will listen. So we appreciate all of your efforts and leadership as board members. So thank you. So I will present some of you with, all of you with the book. And your certificate.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, Jen.
Thank you.
Thanks. To check my Schoology account to see what the reading is.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we got business keys.
Yes, that's good. I'll mail it to her. So that concludes our school board recognition, and I'd like to invite Simon up for his student presentation.
This is the second or third board meeting I've been able to walk up to the podium. I'm glad you finally made it, Mr. Rich.
That was good. Extra
Good
points.
evening. Attempting to make plans with GHS students in January can be rather tricky with the plethora of events that fill the month. Specifically in the arts department, it is extremely busy with the multiple competitions coming up in the next few weeks. The choirs, bands, and orchestras will be participating in a District 10 solo and ensemble event being held at the high school. Coming in February, the drama department will be putting on the Pink Panther for the 2016 winter play. Something new occurring at Granville High School is that the third period AP Environmental class will be taking on bioremediation and restoration of the former Granville Solvent site, which was a chemical disposal company that sat adjacent to the Granville Water Treatment Facility. At the end of its existence, it became apparent that the chemicals at the site started to leak into the soil and completely contaminated the area. For 15 years, the U.S. and Ohio EPA have made progress on cleaning the site, but as it stands, it has been treated as a junkyard. Our goal is to turn the area back into a more natural environment, but at the same time bring awareness to Granville that such an environmental disaster sat within its limits, since so many residents have no idea that such a location exists. Currently, we are in contact with the Ohio EPA and several site managers to gain access to the site and to begin environmental restoration as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very good, by the way, last time.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I think what you just heard about our students taking on the remediation of a Superfund site from several years ago is exactly the type of project-based learning that really engages students in wanting to do more. And whether they're ultimately successful in trying to do what they want to do is a critical lesson as well. So sometimes you have the best intention and things don't always materialize, but that's another life lesson. So I know Mr. Sobel has done some work on that project himself, and I know my daughter talks about it just about every night. So she's a part of that AP environmental class. So thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Simon. Appreciate it.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thanks.
Why don't we start by letting Mike do his report.
Very quick. I just want to give a quick update on the New York Granville Community Authority. The authority only meets twice a year. Today was the January organizational meeting. 2 new board members were appointed by the county commissioners right before the first of the year. Benina Deely and Aaron Wilkmuth, replacing 2 members who moved out of that area. The main thing was electing the officers, but also they did approve a repurposing of the New York Granville Community Authority budget for this year because we had $225,000 set aside for the bus garage project, which we have since mostly abandoned because of cost. We're still spending $25,000 on that to fix up the actual repair facility. But the other $200,000, $100,000 was reallocated to the tennis court project to supplement the money that we moved from the bond fund last month. And that, by the way, that was approved by the Budget Commission right before the first of the year. So we now have $450,000 to carry out the tennis court and infrastructure refurbishing, which will happen in spring. And then the other $100,000 is put aside, reserved, if we don't get the straight A grant from ODE. They've taken the other $100,000 and to move towards one-to-one if it's necessary. If we don't get the grant, if the grant does come through, that $100,000 we'll just hold in the fund and it'll get reallocated at the meeting in May. So
I'd like to just comment briefly. We will have MSA, which was the facility planner that looked at our entire middle school, high school complex here in February to talk a little bit more about the tennis court, really, and what it is an infrastructure improvement project to make sure that the water that's coming down the hill gets to the appropriate place and doesn't ruin the facilities that we have in place now. And then redo that, the tennis court areas as well. So they will be here to present in February, and we'll probably have a couple of action items related to that.
Any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Okay. And I think I have everybody here, right? Excellent. Except for Mr. Bernath, who will, I'm sure he'll be here soon, probably. But he's not really important to this. So you can tell him I said
Get that
that.
on camera.
I know. All right, so I'd like to invite our building principals up to talk a little bit about the continuous improvement plans and process. I referenced that, and Andrew, for your benefit, we 5 years ago have started this process of identifying our continuous improvement plans. We look at areas of strength, areas of need, and we create plans to address and build capacity around central themes. And so the district has a continuous improvement plan, and each building has one. So you're going to hear from each of the principals. Okay?
Good evening, thank you. First of all, on behalf of the principals, I want to wish all of you a happy school board recognition month. And Mr. Khan, welcome to the school board. We're glad to have you. So if you don't know me, I'm Mr. Morris. I'm the principal of the elementary school. I'm just going to walk you through our continuous improvement plan. So the strengths from the previous year, all of our third grade students met the provisions of the third grade guarantee. We were promoted to fourth grade. So the third grade guarantee, if you recall, is scoring proficient or better on the state assessment, which last year was still the Ohio Achievement Assessment. So all of our third graders met that provision, and then we're able to go to the fourth grade. We have 86% of our teachers are consistently using PACS in the classroom, and PACS is a program that is not unique to Licking County, but the Licking County schools have really taken it on as a positive behavior support program, recognizing positive behaviors in the building and the classrooms. There are several activities that teachers can kind of use nuance to kind of change and make it as their own. We've seen a lot of success with that, not only at the classroom level, but also in the building level. We use it quite often at lunch. Kind of when you get 175 third graders sitting in the cafeteria, you get kind of loud and chaotic, but it really does kind of help up, especially with the cleanup process. Last year, 95% of our walkthroughs identified a posted learning target, which was a significant increase from previous years. And 94% of those times, students were able to either recognize the learning target by pointing out where it was and reading it, or being able to articulate it based in their own language. So again, which based on our data was a significant improvement. So we're pretty excited about that. So areas to improve, the first two bullets are based on reading and math. I'm continuing to improve on just a year's worth of growth from fall to spring. We use internal assessments primarily for those, one of those being MAP. We also use DIBELS, which is basically a fluency assessment, especially at the K-1 level. And just looking into wanting to obviously improve that. So our achievement levels are high, but we want to continue that growth from fall to spring in both areas. So because of that, we wanted to make sure that we're focusing our energies on professional development within the building, utilizing staff within the building to help come up with that. So looking at different committees, such as a literacy committee and a math committee, to come up with that professional development. Even though 86% of our teachers use PACS, we want to improve that. We want it to be very consistent and fluid throughout the building, especially as we go from a kindergarten classroom to a first grade classroom to a second grade classroom. We want that consistency. And so we're continuing to provide professional development activities across the building for that. And then the last bullet is really kind of carrying over what we've done in professional development for the last 4 or 5 years, and just making sure that we're looking at the learning targets we're utilizing and making sure we have a variety of learning targets, and then our students have different ways and strategies to kind of master those targets. So really focusing on the differentiation piece. So we really took on 3 initiatives as a building this year. The first was implementing effective and consistent instructional practices for balanced literacy. So balanced literacy is an instructional framework. So it's a way of kind of structuring your literacy block into different components with a lot of different pieces and parts to it. And we wanted to make sure that those are research-based, so we've done a lot of research on that. Part of this was also hiring an instructional coach. Lori Fender, who was previously a second grade teacher, we hired her as an instructional coach. Her role is to go into classrooms, co-teach, model for teachers, great instruction, research-based instruction. She also does assessments with teachers. She will observe teachers, provide feedback. I will tell you that she's probably the busiest person in the building. From the moment she walks in to the moment she leaves, she's working with teachers and with kids. And we've got lots of great feedback from staff. Teachers have come to me and talked about their personal growth and how excited they are to have her. So it's been a great asset. And she's been integral at providing this balanced literacy framework. Again, it's all about developing that consistency in instruction. So when a child goes from a second grade classroom to a third grade classroom, we're not learning new procedures. This is how we do literacy. We do it exactly the same way we did it in second grade. And the language for us as educators is the same as well. So when I'm talking guided reading in my second grade classroom, all the third grade teachers know exactly what I'm talking about because we've defined it as what guided reading is for us, what it looks like, what it sounds like, that sort of thing. This is also very important with our K-3 literacy. As you may know, last year we scored a 58% in the K-3 literacy. That is the measure from fall of kindergarten, who's on track and off track for reading the grade level. And then in first grade, we look at those same kids in first grade, are they on track now in first grade? In fall of first grade, they take an assessment, we look at those kids again in the fall of second grade. So we improved from 58% to this year, which was the fall of this year, went to 72%. And so this is obviously a big piece in doing that, making sure we're consistent so we can continue to grow those kids in reading. The second bullet kind of goes back to the professional development, really honing in on the shared leadership of using our math and literacy committees to help to develop or coordinate the professional development we have. Literacy committee not only working with Lori and myself to look at balanced literacy implementation, looking at the structures, but also other areas. So if we're talking about guided reading, where are the holes in our guided reading? What are those things we're missing that we're not teaching? So we can improve our third grade guarantee scores, we can improve our K-3 literacy scores, and the overall growth of our students. The last initiative is again PACS. This is really spearheaded by Mrs. Roberts, who's our guidance counselor, kind of helping what can we do as a building to do this. We've kind of rolled into PACS something called the zones of regulation. Our occupational therapist uses it a lot with some of her students. We're seeing it quite a large benefit with just in classroom settings. It's basically just kind of measuring where you are. You know, I'm red right now. I'm kind of getting frustrated. So what can I do to bring myself back to a green zone? It actually merges very well with PACS, and so we're kind of implementing the two. So actually this month she's doing lessons on with the teachers on how we can kind of bring those together. So our initiatives really focus a lot on instruction and achievement, but also at the culture of the building as well. This year I also asked each grade level and department to pick 2 goals that they really wanted to focus on and hone in on. So kind of we have our goals in the building level, but then I wanted to narrow it down even to individual grade levels. We have our own needs, and what are those needs we need to work on. So these are just some examples. Each grade level, each department picked one goal that they felt was an academic goal, an achievement or a growth goal, and then one goal that was more of a cultural goal. And it was totally up to them. And so it's interesting how they're very different they are, but the academic goals really kind of focused in, again, on math and reading. And our cultural goals are all about making sure our kids feel welcome and safe at the elementary school. So these are some of the other ones. Evie Reading intervention, our specialist teachers are focusing on collaboration. Our technology coach is really focusing on helping teachers with the rollout of Schoology. And again, Mrs. Roberts focusing on developing PACS in the classrooms. All right, I will turn it over to Mrs. Burris.
Do you have any questions?
Well, no, I was just going to say, can you talk a little bit about learning targets and why we use them, and maybe give a couple of examples of what they are at the elementary level?
Sure.
That was something that was new to me when you brought them in, so I just would, just to update us again on what the learning targets are. Yeah.
So learning target is essentially what that is. What is our target for learning? So in this lesson, in this piece of instruction, what is it we need to focus on? There used to be this concept of mystery learning, where the teachers would kind of come in and it was all a big mystery what we were focusing on. And the whole idea was to discover what we're learning. No, there is some value to that. The idea of a learning target, really setting up the kid for success. This is our end goal. This is where we're going to get to. Here's how we're going to get there. Now let's do it together. Walk through that. There are different types of targets. There is your basic knowledge target. We're going to learn this just so we know it. And it's just something we just develop when we know. Our math facts. Knowledge target. Just develop and learn our math facts. There are skill targets. Basic skills like decoding. Decoding words is a very skill target. There are product targets where we're going to develop and build something and provide a product. And there are reasoning targets, that higher level critical thinking targets. Things like learning just basically how to, instead of just reading a map, how do I go out and create a map of this area? And then, and what purposes will it serve, that sort of thing. So all of our classrooms, we post the targets, and teachers can do it in different ways. Sometimes it's on, they'll project them when they start their lesson. Sometimes they have a board entirely devoted to those learning targets, and so they're listed there by subject. And some teachers like to have, this is exactly what we're focusing on today, whereas other teachers maybe might list 4 or 5 of them and then have like an arrow moving up and down based on, this is our unit, and we're moving our arrow based on where we're going. One of the things that we really have been working on with learning targets in elementary school is goal setting with those. Sometimes it's hard to goal set as a first grade student to set a goal. So if I know this, my learning target is to be able to identify math families. So my goal is to identify 5 math families out of this project, out of this assignment. So really kind of using our targets to then help develop the goals for the kids. That's your question?
Yeah, yep, that's perfect, thanks. Yeah.
How dynamic are they through the school year or through the week? I mean, how often do they get changed over? Or is it really staff dependent or unit dependent on how that works?
It's really student dependent. What are our students focusing on and what their needs are. So, for the most part, if I walk into one second grade classroom and I walk into another one, I'm going to be seeing some similar targets. But whereas I have one classroom that might have a group of students who are just really achieving well, they're moving quickly through something, I might see a target in their classroom they won't see in the other ones for maybe another week or 2. But this teacher realizes these kids can move at a much quicker pace, and so we're going to move along further. They're still mastering what they need to master, it's just at a little bit faster pace. And what you might even see, and I see quite a bit, is we might have a target for our overall reading lesson is our target is to be able to identify SH words. And so, but then when I go to my guided reading group has a different target than Mrs. Deed's guided reading group, because our guided reading needs are a little bit different. And again, so it's all just very dynamic. And I might walk in tomorrow and see a target, and I walk in the next day, it's a whole different target because those kids have moved through it. And there might be classrooms where I see a target that's there for a long time because that target has such demands on it that we just need to keep it going for a while. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
As Gail is coming to the podium, I think it's absolutely critical to understand that what Mr. Morris does at the elementary and what you're about to hear that Mrs. Burris does at the intermediate school really sets the stage for what happens at the middle school and the high school that you're going to hear later. They are the foundation from which everything else is built. And so it's essential that they create that foundational level of skills and dispositions, attitudes, abilities, so that they can be successful later in their matriculation. So, Gail.
Good evening. We have at the intermediate school 5 different strengths that we're showcasing through our CIP this year, 2 of which are around map data, 2 of which that come from information we gleaned from our student survey, and then 1 that is new for us around our collaboration between special area teachers and content area. So with our maps, we have data indicating that we have 95% of our students that are scoring above proficient in reading, 91% that are scoring above proficient in math. Our student survey is showing that we have 98% of our students that agree that they feel their teachers believe that they truly can learn, and 90% of our students that feel they're supported by adults and have someone, at least one adult at the school that they feel comfortable that they can go and talk with, share with, if they have a problem, meet with them, etc. And then something that we really started probably towards the middle of last year is a collaborative effort between our special area teachers and our content area teachers, so that our special area teachers don't feel like a separate entity, or that students don't see them as a separate entity, that this really isn't a real class. It's just something we go to for fun. So we really tried to do some strong collaboration between the 2 of those, and that really is showcased at the end of the year during our cultural arts fair that we do each year. So those are our 5 strengths.
Gail, before you transition, but I want to reference that 3rd bullet or 4th bullet about the student satisfaction survey, because that's actually something that you targeted last year because it wasn't as high. And so will you talk, I know you're going to talk about it in a little bit, but do you remember the actual percentage?
We were down at 82.
And now it's 90?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I'll talk a little bit about how we are able to raise that to 90 further on in the presentation. So our areas of improvement are around school. We have 2 bullets around Schoology. We are providing ongoing professional development for our classroom teachers around Schoology so that they can use Schoology through classroom instruction and assessment. But we're also providing that same professional development to students because we want our students to become independent and logging into Schoology, knowing how to access assignments on the calendar. When we are using it more for assessments and for assignments, that they're able to do that, and then that builds that foundation so that when they do go to the middle school and high school where Schoology is more an integrated piece of the classroom, they're able to do that. So we kind of have that twofold for both staff and for students. We're also doing ongoing professional development with our balanced literacy approach, which is something we've been working on at the intermediate school for the past 2 years, but then this also gives that consistency K-6, because you heard Travis talk about balanced literacy approach at the elementary level, because we're really trying to build a K-6 continuum with our balanced literacy. So we have ongoing PD with that, and then we've also incorporated math workshop, and math workshop is a very similar structure to the classroom structure you see for balanced literacy approach. So it also brings that continuity and that consistency so that when they leave a language arts class and they go to a math class, they're not seeing a totally different approach being used within the structure. So we're trying to kind of blend that together so that it's the same structure and students aren't having to make this big, huge transition when they go from one content area to the other. And then our hope is that that will then start to transition on into science and social studies so that we have literacy going across all content areas as well. Our last one area for improvement is our character ed program. That started with what Mr. Brown was referencing earlier of the bullet that I had of the increase in our percentage of students having an adult in the building. So this started about 3 years ago. And now we're building upon that, in which we have changed it, just tweaked it just a little bit, where we now are starting to build leadership skills amongst our students. And we're doing that through the reuse of 2 books. One of those books is 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. I apologize, there's a typo in the title there because it says kids, but it's actually 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, which is basically used with 5th and 6th grade. And then 7 Habits of Happy Kids, which is definitely used with all 4th grade. And then depending on the content area, sometimes we're using that book for 5th grade, because the other book, there are some things in it that we feel just are a little bit more rich in content that we don't want, we just don't feel it fits our 5th grade students as well. So going back to our areas of improvement, the one was with Schoology. So we started this in August and September. We started very basic, teaching staff how to sign on to Schoology, creating assignments in Schoology where they're posting their homework assignments on a calendar so that students can access that, parents can access that, especially if students are not necessarily writing it in their agenda book, or they get home, parent can't read their handwriting in the agenda book, they're able to go to the calendar in Schoology and see those assignments. The other thing that we made sure that staff could do back in August, September to set up for the rest of the school year was being able to make sure all their course groups were correct so that when students do go in to check the calendar, they are attached to the right courses so that they can see the correct assignments. Creating groups, and those groups might have been staff groups where it might be all the math teachers in a group, all the science teachers in a group, but not only that, but student groups. So if I'm in, for example, Mrs. Cousineau's Reading Language Arts class, if I'm in a book group, I now have a group that I can do book talk through Schoology with my team that I'm in that book group with. So the groups were both staff and student related. And then staff uploading resources to Schoology and then organizing those in folders so it wasn't just a hodgepodge of things listed. So our current and future professional development with Schoology is now to transition to really start making the push to do some of the assignments online on Schoology, whether that's in-class assignments or homework assignments, and then also doing some of our assessments through Schoology, and then having Schoology grade those assessments, because then that can create an item analysis for teachers, and then the information they're receiving from the item analysis will help to influence their instruction, group kids, so that it can be very differentiated and individualized based on student need. And some of that professional development that I just talked about with the assignments and assessments actually will take place this Friday during our staff PD day that we're doing. So the next initiative improvement was around balanced learning and math workshop. So we hold bi-weekly PD sessions during our 8 to 8:35 time period in the mornings before students arrive. And we're doing various PD sessions on the different components of balanced literacy, and then also the different components of math workshop. I do have Lisa Rogers as an instructional coach for balanced literacy, so she's doing a lot of those PD sessions. Some of them, her and I together, some that she's doing just by herself. And then I did send one of my math teachers, Leslie Hopping, to a conference in the fall. Actually, it was in November around math workshop, and it was a week-long conference, and it really is for people who are coaches in the building. But I did send Leslie, and we're getting kind of creative with the time frame so that she can kind of help lead some of those PD sessions for math workshop. All of those sessions are differentiated. We do a pre-assessment with our staff to see where they're at, what their knowledge level is, so that we can differentiate the sessions based on staff need, just like we would in the classroom for students. We also do book room tours to support some of these PD sessions, because we are starting to look at literacy across all content areas. So our book room does include a lot of resources, not just for like reading, language, arts. We do have resources in there for math, science, and social studies as well. So we're providing tours to kind of go in, review those available resources, and then start to learn how to match those to standards and then instruction in the classroom. And then that all ties into each grade level has chosen a goal based on their math results in reading and in math. So we're then matching some of those resources to some of the instructional strategies to actually achieve the goals that they've chosen based on their math results. So the next piece is around assessment and instruction. So Annette Losco, my assistant principal, who I share with Travis, we created math data notebooks for each of our staff. So each teacher has a notebook, and within that notebook they have their math data that is specific to their classroom. The most important piece of that is a student growth quadrant chart where it has 4 quadrants to it. The 4 quadrants are, for example, students in this quadrant would be students who are having low achievement and low growth. They might have high achievement but low growth, high achievement, high growth, and then high growth but low achievement. So we're looking at each one of those quadrants, and we are making watch lists based on those quadrants. And then we're coming back each month at our team meetings to talk about are students growing, are they not growing, are they achieving, not achieving. We'll have a big comparison this month because we just gave maps in December. So they'll get their new quadrants that will run for them, and then we'll be talking about students that we had on those watch lists to see if we're having an impact on them or not. Along with that, we are creating common assessments by content area so that we're assessing, and these are more right now end of the unit assessments, so we're assessing all the students based on the standards, and then we will also start to do some of those common assessments as assessments kind of after each unit. So with that, we're really looking at revisiting our learning targets that we created several years ago when we first transitioned to Common Core, to see, do they really reflect the current standards? And do they have, our learning targets, do they have the depth of knowledge to them that our standards have? So with that, we're looking at how we're designing our assessments, making sure that our assessments actually match a standard, and whether they really match that depth of knowledge of that standard. And then the key to that is, by what we're asking them, can we really glean the knowledge that the student really does know and understand that standard. So that's a whole process that we're working with an outside consultant that is coming in and working with us and kind of blueprinting our standards to say, here's the depth of knowledge of that standard, here's how we should assess it, this is what the assessment will look like, this part of the assessment will be worth 10%, this part of the assessment might be worth 30%. So we're really working on that as well. And then to culminate all of that, we now have what we call a SMART period. It's at the very end of the day. The entire building rolls into SMART period at 2:35, and during that SMART period, based on watch lists, based on map data, based on formative assessments in the classroom, we are grouping kids for intervention and for enrichment opportunities as well. So that takes place across the building every single day.
Is that also related to is there a common schedule this year that's new as well that facilitates that? Is there a bell schedule change this year?
There's not necessarily a common schedule at the intermediate school yet. Okay. Each year I think we're going to get there, but we haven't been able to do that just because of the different nuances between each of the grade levels. But that's the only thing that is common across the building is that SMART period.
Yeah, that's nice.
And lastly is our Character Ed program, which we're really excited about because we're really starting to see the fruits of our labor with our Character Ed program over the past several years. So as I mentioned earlier, we're working with the 2 books, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens and 7 Habits of Happy Kids. So we have 3 components to our Character Ed program. We have what we call our ACE behavior standing for Attitude, Choice, Effort. So when students are showing ACE behavior, they can earn a blue ACE from any staff member in the building, put their name on it, and then it goes up on a board in each of the pods. So that happens all month long. So you could have the opportunity to earn 1 ACE, you could have the opportunity to earn 10 ACEs. At the end of the month, all the ACEs are put into a hat. We draw out 2 names. Those are the students of the month. So hence, the more ACEs you receive, the better chance that you'll be a student of the month. We honor our students of the month at our pep rally, and then we also take their picture, they're up in the showcase, and then they earn a little certificate and a GIS water bottle. So some of the ACE behavior also comes out of our brain waves of the quarter. The brain waves are actually the 7 habits. So since there are 7, this is going to be a 2-year process. We're doing 4 this year, 1 each quarter, and then we'll do 3 next year. So first quarter, the first habit was about being proactive, taking control of yourself, being responsible for your own actions, really looking at body language and how you display and interact with different people. Our brainwave this quarter, second quarter, was begin with the end in mind. So that was all about goal setting. That really relates back to one of our district initiatives, the student ownership of learning and setting goals. So Mrs. Braymeyer, our guidance counselor, goes in and actually does actual lessons on each one of those brain waves or 7 habits. And then that kind of becomes our focus for the quarter, which then brings in the MIC, which stands for My Inside Connection. Every 5th and 6th grader writes a letter to an adult in the building that they're comfortable with, asking them to be their MIC. And their MIC is the person that they can turn to if they need assistance academically, social emotionally, they're having friendship issues, they just need to have a break and have lunch with you, whatever that may be. And then we then encourage the brain waves of the quarter and then the ACE behavior as well. The staff commitment is that you are expected to touch base with your person that you're a MIC for at least once a month, but the option is there to touch base with them as much as you want. So 5th and 6th did their MIC letters on Schoology. 4th grade is just handwriting out their letters. So right now everyone should be in the process. I think we're finishing up 4th grade right now to choose their MICs, but 5th and 6th grade have already chosen. They can choose anyone in the building they want. It can be anyone from a teacher to custodian, educational aide. I have 4 people that I'm a MIC for. So it will now be my responsibility to touch base with them at least once a month or more than that. And I think that is it. Any questions?
Do the mics change year to year, or are they intended to be?
They can
continuous?
if they want, because they can choose a new mic each year. I have had one person that I've been their mic since 4th grade, and they're a 6th grader. Some of my mics people I was mics with have moved on to middle school, high school. Out of my 4 this year, 3 of them are 5th graders, and 1 of them is a 6th grader, which is to be expected. I wouldn't expect a 4th grader to really choose me at this point, because they are just, learning who I am and getting to know me and that type of thing. But it's really fun. The staff loves it, because it just gives them someone, kind of makes us feel good that that person really would depend on us. So it's a really neat program, and it's because of this that we attribute the increase in that student survey.
It's great.
Because this is something we've talked about in the whole child committee, right?
It's actually a large piece for tomorrow's meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of neat in our leadership team meeting. Gail's talking about the mic program, and Matt's going, oh, wait a second. We were talking about that in the whole child, so.
That's great.
We've noticed a couple of staff members have been doing more like flipped classrooms where kids watch videos at home and more online assignments and things like that. How's that going? How's that adoption going? It's interesting to see the experiments. What's your thoughts on that?
The kids love it, and teachers love it, because we've really tried to do a push about homework. We received some feedback a couple of years ago that students were spending 3-4 hours on homework. It's not something we want them to see, because we want them to also be kids. They work hard during the day, so when they go home at night, yes, there's an expectation for homework, but I'm working with 9, 10, 11-year-olds, and they need to go home and have some fun and just be kids. So we really looking at real meaningful homework, and not just homework you're sending home just to be busy work. So the flipped classroom has given that opportunity to really make it meaningful and front load what might happen in class the next day. So if you don't know what a flipped video is, or you aren't in a classroom where they're doing that, the teacher videotapes themselves doing a concept. So let's say they're going to do the next day math, and they'll learn how to add and subtract fractions. She or he will do a video on explaining how you do addition and subtraction of fractions. Attached to that flipped video, it's usually only about 3 to 5 minutes long, are probably 3 to 5 questions. So they'll watch the video, they'll answer the questions, and right away, teacher knows the next day, here's who I need to put in this group, here's who I need to put in this group, or wow, these students really know already how to add and subtract fractions, so I need to adjust my lesson so I'm actually picking up where they really have information or that foundation built already. So it's been some great formative assessment pieces for them. And it's really assisted teachers in really differentiating their instruction based on what they're learning from that flip video. So there's more. Last year, I think I had 1 or 2 teachers using them, and this year we have probably about half the staff. So it's been a really positive piece for homework, and I think parents love it too, because especially in math is taught very differently than the way, well, I'll speak for myself, than the way I learned math. So parents can watch the video and really see, oh, so that's how you're teaching them how to add and subtract fractions now. So we receive some good feedback from parents as well.
Or maybe get the instruction if you need some help.
Yeah. Okay, just one question. Can you talk to us a little bit about MAPS and why we're using that, and what it gets us over and above just regular assessment of content area?
MAPS is given 3 times a year, so we give a fall assessment, a winter assessment, and a spring assessment. It's all diagnostic. There's no grades associated with MAP. So what it does is it gives teachers information based on individual needs. It'll tell, they get an overall RIT score, which is a normative score that there's a national norm RIT score, so we compare that to that, but then we also can get what is the Granville RIT score as well. And it helps us to group students according to their needs based on strengths and weaknesses. We give it a math and reading. So it's a nice diagnostic piece for us to really help form groups, differentiate instruction, meet different individual needs. We really use a lot of map data. They use a lot of map data to form groups for intervention and enrichment period, that SMART period at the end of the day. So it's just it's one other data point. It's not the end-all be-all, but it provides us with some really concrete information to help us guide instruction and form those groups.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gail.
There we go, sorry about that. Well, hello, everyone. Well, I guess there's only one person that probably doesn't know me. I'm Lisa Orman, the middle school principal, so welcome. It was nice to go after the intermediate school because she talked about several things that I won't have to go into as much detail about. So some of the things we want to highlight for the middle school strengths. As you can see up there, the two top ones come from our 8th grade exit survey that we've been doing for about 5 years now. And fortunately, our numbers keep going up, which is a good thing, except for one area that I'll talk about here in a minute. But 95% of our students were saying they had a positive experience, and 97% saying that they feel like there's at least one adult that cares about them. So, as Mrs. Burris alluded to as well, 5 years ago, those percentages were lower, and so they keep going up. So it's just definitely something we want to celebrate. And also, we also give the MAP test as well 3 times a year. And so you can see there that 88, 87% of our students are either meeting or exceeding what we would expect them to do for reading as far as achievement goes. Now we've only been, this is our 3rd year giving MAP. The elementary, I believe, has been doing it the longest than the intermediate school. So, and we only give ours in reading. We do not give the MAP test in MAP. So, some areas that we'd like to improve upon. This, again, goes back to our 8th grade exit survey. I said there was one area that we didn't like. 61% of our 8th graders said their stress level was high or very high. And the reason that concerns us is because it continues to go up. It's not going down. And so, and another thing we've noticed over the years that is typically, if you break it down by gender, it's typically females who are reporting this more so than males. So because of that, there's definitely some things we've been trying to target more. So over the last few years, I would say we've been trying to work with students about stress management and whatnot. But this year especially, we brought Rachel's Challenge back in again. And from that, we have the 4 Club, which is Friends of Rachel. They meet every Friday before school. It's a large group, but some Fridays they all can't be there. So it's kind of nice. They know, well, if I can't make it this Friday, then I'll make it next Friday or whatnot. But this group this year is really taken off, and they're becoming student leaders. And so some of the ideas that are coming from that, we have students that they asked for permission to paint one wall in the project center with chalkboard paint, and they want to call it the Good Vibe Wall to put messages there. And so I said, sure. Well, they had to reach out and they had to write letters and they had to contact Home Depot and Lowe's to ask if they would donate the paint and the supplies and everything that we needed. They've done that. It was all donated, so now we're getting ready to paint the wall. We'll do that some weekend. They asked if we could do some positive Post-it notes. And so the very first time we did it, Mrs. Postal, the school counselor, came to me and she said, one of the subgroups of the 4 Club would like to try a Post-it note activity. And I said, well, okay. And she said, well, we're going to put a Post-it note in the girls' restroom with a positive note, and then we're going to leave all these piles of Post-it notes, and we want to see if people will spread the word and pass it on throughout the day. And I was like, okay. And she's like, this could be a little risky. I said, let's try it. They want to do it. It was really amazing. At the end of the day, when the staff members, the female staff members went in there, and the mirror was covered with all these positive messages from students throughout the day. And they were all abuzz about it and talking about it. So that was something they did. Some other ideas they've come up with with students is being greeters at the door, the front door and the back door when the students walk in. And so every week there'll be a little different group of kids that on a certain day, on Friday or whatever it is, they'll stand there and they're just saying hi and greeting kids as they walk in. I will say that there are some middle schoolers who aren't ready for that in the morning. Too much happiness taking place at that 7:30 in the morning. But I like their ideas. They want to do a new mural. We have in our brick hallway, we have a mural that was done probably 8 or 9 years ago. They want to paint over that and do a new one, and it is time. It's time for new ones. They have some great ideas for that, with putting student handprints on the wall in the shape of an ace, the message. They're just coming up with some really neat ideas. But to piggyback off that as well, so things that we're trying to do, as Mrs. Burris alluded to, they have a SMART period this year at the intermediate school. At the middle school, we have what's called an ACE period. We've had it for about 5 or 6 years now. When we originally implemented it, it was strictly for intervention. It has now evolved into intervention or enrichment. And then this year it's also evolved into like an activity period, is what I would call it, for students that have their work caught up. So it's 2 days a week, it's for 30 minutes, and ACE does not stand for anything, it's just because we're blue ACEs, so it's the ACE period. So this year we're trying to implement some new things, every ACE days are typically Tuesdays and Thursdays, so every Thursday is Yoga Thursdays. Mrs. Postal, our school counselor, heads that up. And it started off really small, and she was concerned. I think the first time we had about 12. Last week, I think there was 57. It's really grown. Kids really enjoy it. They take it very seriously, so they can do yoga for half an hour in the gym. We also now have a barbell club, so kids that want to get some weightlifting in, they do that. We have a mixed choir that during the day we have girls choir and boys choir, but we don't have a class where they're together. And so we have this additional choir group. So we have these neat activities taking place during the day where the kids can just do something they really enjoy and hopefully decompress and kind of forget about some of the stressors that are taking place. So that's been working out very well. We've been happy with that, and I hope we can find more ways to build upon that and continue with it. Another area of improvement, we go back, if you look at our MAP testing, achievement-wise, we're doing well, just like on the state test. But only about 50% of our students, 7th and 8th grade both, are meeting their growth targets. So I kind of think of that as a little bit of value added. So at the middle school, we've typically always done well with achievement, but then we've got pockets of where we're struggling with growing those kids. They're already so high, we have to continue growing them, but it's a struggle sometimes. So that is something we definitely are working on. And Mrs. Burris, again, alluded to Lisa Rogers as her instructional coach. And so last year, I had Lisa come over several different times to meet with my language arts teachers because Lisa has a lot of experience with that in her former district using that data. And so she was quite helpful for showing the teachers all these different reports. It's inundating the amount of reports you get from this MAP testing. It's wonderful, but it's also overwhelming when it's new to you. And it takes time. I mean, you really have to have time to sit down and look through all the reports to figure out, okay, how's that going to affect my instruction? What am I going to do next? So this year, another step that I took is I sent 2 of my language arts teachers to a 2-day MAP workshop where they learned more about how to dig into the data, which reports show this, which reports should show that, and different ways you can group students. So actually this Friday, during our staffing service when the students aren't here at school, that's one of the big focuses for the language arts teachers. They're going to be talking about what they learned at that MAP training. So hopefully we can focus on ways of getting those students to show more growth. So our initiatives, everyone has the 2 district initiatives with Schoology and ProjectBased Learning. I won't go into too much detail there, you've heard a lot about it. The one thing I would say about Schoology, while we're implementing that this year, we are also trying to continue to work on what we've done the last 4 years with formative and summative assessments, descriptive feedback, student understood learning. You've heard the other principals mention that as well. So one thing that I did, I brought in a guest speaker, as did the intermediate school, for depth of knowledge. And depth of knowledge it's really about complexity, and there's 4 levels to it. A lot of people think of it like Bloom's. Those are in education, you've heard of Bloom's. Bloom's really focuses on the verbs, where depth of knowledge is really focused on the activity that comes after the verb. So how complex is the activity you're wanting the students to do? So we had a lady from Franklin County ESC come in and work with our teachers twice. Mrs. Burris has gone on further with the assessment blueprint. I'm waiting to hear how this works out with her because I may focus on that then next year as well. See how that works out. I have 5 people in my building that are on the district project-based learning team. And I was really happy because I have 3 content teachers, but I have a specials teacher who wanted to join and my librarian wanted to join. So I feel like that's a good mix. I really like having a librarian on the committee as well. I talked a little bit about the school culture and climate and what we're working on. Oh, another thing, because of I just thought of this. Because the stress, the percentage of students with high stress keeps going up, and we've noticed a trend with females especially. So we're having a brand new group, it's called ROX. If you've ever heard of it, ROX. It stands for Ruling Our Own Experiences, and it's strictly for females, and you have to go away and get trained for this. We have an enormous long waiting list of students that want to get in, and so hopefully next year we'll get them in. But it's all about empowering females to have self-confidence, and to use those leadership skills and to make better connections with people. So that actually that starts next week. So we're excited about that as well. And then this technology with Schoology and just different staff and services, like Mrs. Burris alluded to, we frequently give assessments. I guess maybe not assessments, but surveys, I should say. We give surveys at the middle school to find out where the staff is with their Schoology knowledge and what is it they want to learn next and where they're at, and different other technology topics they want to talk about, so that way each month at the staff in service we can differentiate and offer a variety of sessions, and the teachers go to which one best suits their needs. I will say at the middle school I feel very fortunate that the majority of the staff members have really embraced Schoology, and they're pretty much doing most of the benchmarks already, so it's going really well.
I have a question, Lisa, on the increasing stress levels. It sounds like there are some real efforts underway, which I think are great to deal with what's probably sort of peer-to-peer pressure and social group adjustment pressure. Is that where most of is that where you're seeing most of the stress levels going up, as opposed to academically oriented? Or
we actually do talk to the students, and we ask them on the survey too to have them list if they can identify what this pressure is, if they can identify it. And I will say overwhelmingly, the pressure to be perfect, the pressure to get good grades in Granville, sometimes it's the pressure from within, internally. A lot of times they say it's pressure from their parents. They have to do well. Pressure to be in accelerated classes, and maybe they don't want to be in accelerated classes. I would say those are like the top 5 things we've been hearing consistently for the last 3 years.
And so the ROX group and the 4 group, those are addressing some of those pressures in addition to others.
For sure, because like I said, if you break it down by gender, we notice a significant trend of females. So that was one way. And the 4 club is just trying to get kids involved and have a school spirit, school pride, and just that not everything has to be focused around academics or just adolescent issues in general.
Right.
You know, with who your friends are and how you fit in and what you're wearing.
Is this something, I think you said it's the 8th grade survey that reflects this. So is it something that we should be, can you tell, should we be looking at it for the younger grades and doing something, and not to say we're not already doing something, because I know there are great things happening in each one of the buildings, but I guess I'm asking, is this something that we thought about? Is there a comprehensive approach that we should be doing across the district?
As far as stress levels, I believe the elementary and intermediate give that question. It's just not nearly as high. For whatever reason, from the intermediate, when they do the 6th grade survey to the 8th grade survey, there's a drastic jump.
Yeah.
And then I believe from middle school to high school, it's another drastic
Yeah.
jump. So I know they also are putting some efforts into this as well. I'm sure we'll probably talk about that. But 7 through 12, and it's just a little worrisome, because I would say in the last 5 years, I've just seen more and more students that are just struggling with anxiety. So much though that it's debilitating. It's hard to come to school, it's hard to go to class. At the middle school level, that is drastic.
It's a concern. Thank you.
Thank you. We're hoping that as we transition to some project-based learning and not focus on state assessments as much, that maybe some of that will also contribute to it. But we have we have really high achieving kids, and sometimes
Right.
they're high achieving in their own mind, and it's hard for them to back down from wanting to be perfect.
Sure.
And that's a challenge.
Sorry, Miss Deeds and I were working a side deal. Yeah. I would love to jump back into that stress conversation if we can. I have the privilege of, I would say, leading the whole child committee for the district. And so let's go back about 4 years. And when we started to develop those exit surveys that the students are given at the building levels as they're leaving 3rd grade, 6th, 8th, 12th, that was a question that was intentionally put on those surveys. One of the other pieces that we asked about was, what ways do you cope with stress? So it's very easy for us to just pull a Scantron with a number for, are you very stressed, not at all. It's easy to pull that number. What was interesting to us equally was, okay, let's say that there are 90% of high school students who indicate that they are stressed or highly stressed. I'm highly stressed. So do we care about stress or do we care about coping? It was a dual conversation. And so we looked very intentionally at the coping mechanisms that students were writing in. Now, obviously, there were coping strategies or coping mechanisms that were destructive. Now, were they kids just being kids and trying to get a laugh out of us because they knew we were reading the survey results? I'm sure there was some of that, but there were some genuine concerns as well. At the same time, there were people that were writing things down. I exercise, I talk with friends. Like things that we would all love to see a student write down as a coping strategy. So we saw some of the bad, but then we also were a bit reassured because we saw a lot of really good things written down as ways to cope. The other piece that we started to tie in 2 years ago, so we've got 2 years of data, and it's not the same tight connection with stress and how do you cope, but we started to incorporate things about electronics use, media curfews, and sleep deprivation. And in my opinion, when you start to look at holistic development, if I'm not unplugging from the stress of my day as a student, it's no surprise then that I feel stressed about my day. And what we have seen is an absence of guidelines with electronics use, an absence of restrictions with the hours of use with those devices. And so that's really become a very intentional, targeted message from the whole child committee through the well notes over the last 2 school years. We'll start to see, hopefully, some benefit from those. But as the parent of a current kindergartner, I've even been talking with Travis Morris about, what can we do to attach ourselves to some type of a PTO or any of the building events at the elementary school level, because I can tell you from what I've learned, my kindergartner will never have a cell phone in his bedroom, just because of what I've seen and what I've learned from this process. So our attempts to get that message to that level parent in hopes that, yeah, we'll send the same message to the high school parents, but if you've never set an electronics rule for 5 years, that's an uphill battle at that point. But if we can catch a kindergarten parent before they've got a cell phone in the son's hand, then I think we're winning as we make our way up through the grade levels in those regards. I think it's an adult issue as well. I think I love myself into the category. We have a very hard time unplugging and a very hard time relaxing away from our professions. So I think some of it comes down to just our ability to model those things for our students. And I'll speak for myself specifically. I can do a better job with that. I was laughing when Lisa talked about the barbell club because I could go and make use of the barbell club just the same. And maybe that's, maybe I'll spend some time down there with them on a weekly basis. I want to walk you through the remaining CIP plan, obviously the one at the high school level. And I want to echo some of the comments that were made earlier. I'm always really impressed when I get to listen to Travis and Gail and Lisa talk about what their plans are, because it really starts to inform what we want to do at the high school level. But it also gives us a lot of confidence that we've got students who are coming in with a really solid K-8 experience. And like Jeff said earlier, if we don't have those students coming in with that K-8 experience, then we're starting in a whole different place when they come to us in 9th grade. So just a quick look at some of the strengths that we pulled for this year's CIP, and I really want to highlight the 3rd and 4th bullets on there. When more than 8 out of 10 students who take an AP exam score at a 3 or higher, you're in very, very good territory. That is a huge compliment to the AP teachers, and it's equally a compliment to the students that enroll in those courses. We've got a nice, I've talked about this before specifically with high school parents, we've got this very nice trifecta in our community of parents who have high expectations and support for education, students who say, where's the bar, I'm going to jump over it, and teachers who understand where to set the bar. So we've got this really nice confluence of those 3 factors, and I think that is what yields a result like that 82% that you're seeing up on the screen. For the last 5 years, the high school has been right around that 80% mark, and the only thing that we've done is increase the number of AP exams taken on a yearly basis. So that works against all the statistics, that we have introduced more tests taken, and we haven't seen anything happen except for steady growth or maintenance of that number in terms of how many students are scoring at that level. The average ACT composite score was 25.2 last year for the GHS students. That specifically speaks to the graduating class of seniors. When we get those results from the ACT company, they send us a very nice detailed report, and it lists out that score average for the graduating seniors. So that's another thing that we really like to see and hang our hat on. When Ryan was the principal of the building, we really started to see an intentional movement in that number, due in large part to the ACT Quality Core exams that we give at the end of several of the courses at the high school. Chemistry is an example of a course that takes an end of course exam. There's no state test for chemistry. So if we wanted to, we could ignore any type of a value-added measure for the chemistry courses at the high school. The leadership, it's been probably 8 years, but the leadership at the time had the foresight, and they recognized this value-added information is really beneficial for our teachers. They are very impatient in regards to seeing their results. They want to know how their students performed. This year's been a tough one because the results aren't going to be released until February. Normally it's October, November, so it's been a tough one for them to kind of sit in a holding pattern because they're really curious to see what those results are. 2 very targeted improvement areas. The first one, 91% of sophomores scored proficient or better on the science OGT. Now, the OGT is going away, so why did we pull that out? We spent 4 professional days last year working with some of the science staff, giving them time to unpack the curriculum so they could take a look at why are we performing at these measures on this test. This connects somewhat with that ACT quality core test that we also give in biology. Now this year, the ACT quality core will not be given in biology. It's actually going to be a state-written end-of-course test. But nonetheless, we were able to, over the last 12 months or so, really take a look at those deficient areas for biology specifically. Basically put the teachers in a room with the information and checked on their progress, but they're in a whole different place this year when compared to last year. It was a very positive experience. The second bullet is taken from the 12th grade exit survey. Only 81% of graduating seniors responded positively to a question about feeling emotionally safe at school. We don't like that. If we go back to the first year for these exit surveys, we were in the neighborhood of 60% positive responses to the question about, do my teachers care about me? You heard that referenced at 2 of the other buildings, that number is now up in the 90s. This number will climb. I expect in 1 or 2 years, we'll have that number up where we want it to be as well. So specifically for the GHS high school staff, we really have 2 goals that I want to highlight at the building level. These are very similar to some that you've already heard. We did want to mirror the district goals this year. The first is to utilize Schoology to support ongoing implementation of previous professional development, and the second being increase the knowledge and understanding of the staff as it relates to project-based learning. So let's break down goal 1. Some of the indicators that you'll see if you walk through the building as it relates to Schoology. 1, the initial task was learn Schoology. Learn as many features and functions as possible, and then implement them with as much fidelity and depth as possible through the school year. So the first use of Schoology features by teachers and students, great examples of that are the calendar feature, the different messaging functions that work inside of Schoology. The second, the creation and use of lessons in Schoology. You see that in varying degrees. You know, Gail talked about flipping the classroom. We've seen some of that with the English 9 curriculum, specifically at the high school. And then finally, the creation and use of formative and summative assessments in Schoology. A great example, again, to go back to the English department, the students do read summer reading books every summer, and when they come back to school, really that first week, they're given assessments on those summer reading activities. Beth Simmons and Amy Tolbert got together this summer. They started learning Schoology, and in time for that first week of school, they created a series of assessments in Schoology that related to those summer reading books. So you can imagine sitting down as a student, you're taking a 50-question multiple choice test that the teacher designed in Schoology. Seems pretty straightforward to you as a student. On the back side though, here's where it really gets fun with Schoology. Amy and Beth created, let's say, 100 questions for that 50-question test that you took on the summer reading. They randomized the questions, and they randomized the question options, or the answer options, for the students. So you could give 30 students the same summer reading test, and nobody's test looked the same because of the abilities that we find inside of Schoology. Take it one step further, when they're done with the assessment, it's literally a mouse click for a report on how the students did. So it's really an efficiency measure, it's an effectiveness measure, and I think that it's some that you'll continue to see our teachers get better and better at as we go on. The second goal deals specifically with project-based learning. As you guys understand, that came out of the innovation process from last year. We've made a very intentional focus at staff meetings to spend literally every staff meeting working through project-based learning. It's easy to learn a lot about something that you don't know much about. And so our chore for this year was to really emphasize our little tagline for our staff meetings is learning, not logistics. So we take care of all of the logistics for the building is in written communication. That way when we get together for staff meeting, it's 35 minutes of learning. And so we're using articles, we're using text as expert exercises. We've extended the learning through the Schoology discussion board with the staff. I have a course inside of Schoology that my staff, think of them as students in that course. And so they're doing additional postings for that. And then also participation on the district level PBL committee. We had our meeting, our monthly meeting was earlier today. And so we've got 7 members of the high school staff that are marching through that process of creating the next 3 to 5 years for PBL. So the CIP really breaks down at the district level, the building level, and then we also ask departments to set 2 goals that are evidence-based, measurable goals. That portion of our CIP, if you print it off the website, that's about 3 pages. So I just wanted to pull a few goals out that I thought were pretty fun to talk about. Global language. increase the use of the target language by the teacher to 75% of class time. That means that 3 out of 4 school days, it's nothing but Spanish in Spanish class. That's something that's actually grown from 50% from a few years ago. So what we've seen the global language teachers do is grow from probably less than 50% of class time in the target language to now up to 75% of class time in that language. In the math department, they're working to develop self-assessment rubrics that include learning targets. If any of you have ever tried to help someone who's struggling in a course, you'll resonate with this thought. What do you do when a student comes to you and you say, well, how can I help you? You know, what do you need help with? And they say, I don't even know where to begin. When they're so lost that they don't even know where to begin, that's when this is really critical. This allows a student to take a look by learning target and to say, I got this, I definitely need some help with this, and I got this. So think of the efficiency that's built into a help session when a student walks up with a self-assessment piece of paper and says, I just need these 2 learning targets, I'm really struggling on those 2 things. Rather than 15 minutes of trying to figure out what is the student even struggling with, because they can't even communicate how lost they are. We've heard a lot about MAP, the progress monitoring piece. The special education department is working to include MAP data into the writing of IEP goals, profiles, and objectives. Again, that progress monitoring piece is really critical, especially for a student who's on an IEP. So in K-8, MAP is given to every student. At the high school level, we specifically target students on IEPs or students who we know would benefit from progress monitoring. Think of the ISP situation that Sarah Sharp helps us facilitate. Those students who are at a 1.5 and they really should be at a 3.0, but they're just not working, they're just not functioning where they should be. We've started to include more of those students into these MAP progress measures just so that we've got that diagnostic. It's so nice to see 3 times a year, are we plugging along? It's additional information outside of just class grades. And the benefit that's been spoken about earlier as well is that it gives us very, very nice results. And it's data that we can actually consume and then use in the classroom level. I do want to make a real quick comment about the transition that's occurred from the early release days to these PD days that we have now in our calendars. Early release was difficult. Teachers stand and deliver or work with students literally all day long. And then once a month they were asked to come to professional development and be energetic and focused and engaged in what was happening. And they gave the old college try. I mean, everyone did. What we're starting to see now, though, is as we've moved away from those 2-hour windows of time, and all of a sudden we've got 8 hours, is that we're getting a lot more work done because we've got a much longer chunk of time to work with. Staff is, I'll speak to the high school, and I think that they're mirroring some of this at the other levels as well. They're doing similar things. This Friday, we will meet with our staff. We will pull out their personal professional development plans that they created. We asked them to create plans that focus back to the last 4 years, specifically 2 things that you want to work on and really implement at a greater depth from the last 4 years. So they wrote those plans. So when we meet with them Friday morning, what are you working on today? And then all they're doing is identifying their goals for the day. How are we going to measure your success as a worker today? Here you go. They go. We're out in the building working with them. Come back together at lunch. Go back to the rooms. Come back together at 3 o'clock. Okay, what'd you get done and what's remaining on your plan? They've responded so well to that longer chunk of time that I really think it's a positive move that we've done and we're headed in the right direction. Can I answer any questions for you about the high school plan?
I'm curious about the survey question about emotional safety. Is it peer related more than adult student related?
Yes, I can say that with certainty. Amy's question was, is it peer related in terms of emotional safety? as opposed to adult to student, and the answer is yes. One of the things that we started doing this year for the first time, let's go back to almost a year ago, last March. We sent a group of students to a Youth Leadership Council event that was really facilitated by the Youth Leadership Council of Lincoln County, which is kind of under that Our Futures umbrella. Bobby Persinger from Pathways helps facilitate that group. And they went to this one-day leadership training. They were tasked with identifying one thing they wanted to change in their building. They were given time through the day to brainstorm it. They came back to me and they said, we want to run a field day. And I said, you want to run a what? But this isn't GES, this is GHS. We don't do field days.
We love it.
Yeah. Well, we love it now too. So they kept pushing. To their credit, they kept pushing at this. And they said, listen, we don't think freshmen connect well with juniors. And we don't think sophomores connect well with seniors. And inside of our classes, we're fine, but we don't do a great job 9-12 of knowing older or younger students and really connecting with them. Think emotional safety with this. So in August this year, we hosted our first ever Club Fair Field Day on the second Friday of school. It was an overwhelming success. We had 28 clubs set up around the track at the high school with information, with signups for students. We bought a crazy amount of food for them, and we set up games all over the football field. We gave them like about an hour and a half at the end of the day. And I'm telling you, we sat the kids in the bleachers to give them instructions on the day. There are 850 kids sitting in the high school bleachers, and I looked at the two advisors, Carly Worrell and Randy Cooper, and I said, what's your backup for when they don't move? I mean, what are we going to do if 850 stare at us because they don't want to come down here and play anything on the football field? And they felt confident with it. So we gave them the instructions, and we said, the food's at the concession stand, the games are here, the clubs are there, go. And kids literally ran out of the bleachers to get onto the football field to start playing some of these games. I didn't see it coming. It was energizing. It was a great way to go into the weekend that early in the school year. The clubs that had their tables out and they were passing out information, we've never had so many kids sign up for clubs. Now, it's kind of like that freshman year in college thing where you sign up for everything, right? So the numbers fell a little bit appropriately. But, you know, the Interact Club walked away with more than, I think, 70 members. Now, are all 70 active? No. But you've got 70 kids that understand Interact, and if they want to jump into that at some point, then they can. So that's something that we're really starting to wrap our heads around. That group of kids, they worked with the chef in the cafeteria, and they said, let's give away pancakes one morning. Let's just do it to do it. Just because I want to meet new people, and we're going to promote some type of togetherness here. So they did. Chef John set them up with some pancake batter, and they were down there. They brought their own griddles in, and they're down there on a late arrival Wednesday, and they're just flipping pancakes, handing them out to students, and just having conversations with people that they never would have had a conversation with before. That's the type of stuff that we're really trying to promote.
It's great to see Schoology adoption and a lot of the staff members using technology and things. Do you think that we're there with kind of online content and assessments and things like that, that we're ready to take advantage of one-to-one technology?
Oh. If you ask by a show of hands how many teachers want one-to-one, it's going to be almost unanimous. Their main frustration right now is that they've poured energy and time into Schoology, and we're fighting over the 9 mobile labs that we have at the high school. Honestly, we can't. We've talked to Glenn about can we do some type of like a tablet lab? Can we do what can we do to put more technology into the hands of the students? We absolutely want that to happen, unquestionably.
Next question, yeah, outside of academic stress, do you have any way with such high-performing bands and athletic programs, do you have ways of measuring maybe the kind of need to succeed extracurricularly as well as academically?
Yeah, I would say it mirrors the academic stress. I talked earlier about like us being role models for students with things like electronics use. And again, if I audit my own life, right now, I'm not a great example for my own kids, because I'm going to sit down when I get home tonight, and I'm going to open my laptop, and I'm going to take care of stuff for tomorrow. I think this community is extremely unique, and I think we're extremely special, but I think we've got our warts too. It's a community of professionals. It's a community of people who have been good, who have succeeded, who work their tails off to get there, and our students watch us do that. And so then that's normal for them. They're doing that because they watch us do it. It's a community issue. We brought in Tyler's Light to do some talking the first week in November. Tyler's Light is a guy named Wayne Campbell. He lost his son because of heroin. So he came in to deliver a very, very strong message to our students. And I stood in front of the students and I introduced Wayne Campbell and I said, guys, we're kidding ourselves if we don't understand that as a community, we have an issue with substance abuse. I mean, I love this place. That's why I moved here. But we've got some things that we need to work out as a community. I would say stress is one of them. I would say substance abuse is another one of those as well. They're just things that we need to be really intentional about and bring to the forefront so that we can start to make gains in those areas.
Anything else?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me turn on, Matt, you turn on that. So a couple of comments. First of all, you're in really good hands. You have some fantastic leadership at the building level. And one of the things that I think has really been fantastic to watch is the intentionality. So we're not just doing surveys to do surveys. People are using that information, doing intentional things like the MIC program, and then looking to see if there's a change in the numbers. And so the intentionality that they have, the metrics that they've used, that they've built an understanding of and are implementing in the schools is just fantastic. And I will also want to highlight, because several of them said, well, what are we expected to do? 2 or 3 minutes a person? Your 2 or 3 minutes were like my 2 or 3 minutes, guys. Come on, that was awesome. But don't ever make fun of me going off. I'm just saying. So, isn't that true, Bernat? Yes. So, I am very, very pleased with the progress that we've made in our efforts towards continuous improvement and the metrics that we use and the intentional efforts to improve around things that matter most. So kudos to my leadership team, and that's everybody sitting in this room, except for Michael, but someday. All right? So thank you.
Thank you. That was terrific.
Thank you all.
Really good. Thank you.
So
at this point in time, we've come to the part of the agenda for public comments. If anyone would like to come to address the board, please come to the podium and you can speak for up to 3 to 5 minutes. No takers?
Good thing Alex went home.
Exactly. Okay, action agenda.
all right, the first item is something that you heard about tonight. 8.01 is the approval for the GMS 4 Club, which is the Friends of Rachel.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Take roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Pound?
Aye.
Ms. Dees?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
8.02 is the approval of the GHS Korean Club, and I will talk about this in a minute.
So moved.
Second.
So one of the things that I've kind of been exposed to on many college visits is a lot of colleges say, one of the things that's a benefit in our school is that if you have a pursuit or a passion that you want to, really dive into, if you can get a faculty advisor, you can have a club, okay? Well, this is a perfect example of students having a desire to talk about Korean issues, Korean topics, and a staff member saying, yeah, I'm willing to facilitate that conversation. And so this really came from students, and they talked to Jennifer Newell, and they were able to get her as an advisor. This is completely voluntary on the part of our staff. So we don't pay Jennifer an extra stipend. This is 100% volunteer time. So I think this is another excellent example, and I'm sure they'll have a table at the field day next year, and kids will have an opportunity to interact with that club. We also happen to have the director of Korean Studies as a resident, Mitch Lerner, who, once he hears about this club, is going to flip. He's going to love it. So, again, it's the ability for us to interact with people that have a great wealth of knowledge. So,
Any other questions?
No.
Take the roll, please.
Ms. Deeds.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Mr. Khan.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
We have several unpaid leaves of absences.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments about
No,
them? or any
no
questions?
comment.
No. Take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Mr. Khan.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
The next item, 8.04, is the James and Betty Coffee Grant for the middle school FCCLA program.
So moved.
Second.
Do we approve, it seems to me, an award just about every meeting or every other meeting for
She
Mrs.
is
Blatter?
one of the most prolific grant writers I know.
She's terrific.
She is fantastic.
Excellent.
What I really appreciate is she's trying to save the district money.
Yeah.
She knows that if she can get these awards, then she will not have to build it into her budget. So it's fantastic.
I really commend her for that.
Yeah, she does. She's fantastic.
Rafe is excited about the fuel up to play.
Oh, yeah.
Part.
That's great.
Can I just ask a question about?
Sure.
When grants come in, how do they make it to the agenda or not? Like, is there a monetary level?
Usually if it's a grant like this versus a donation.
Okay.
Yeah. Grants we use as action items, and donations we just recognize.
Okay.
The grants have to, yeah.
They have an item, line item.
They have their own line
Yeah,
item.
line item,
They have their
yeah.
own budget line, yeah.
Budget line, right, that's what I
Yes.
was looking for. Okay. Any other questions? No? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds.
Aye.
Mr. Khan.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
The consent agenda, 9.01, A through C, 3.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
And I will bring a couple of things to your attention. There was a correction in the last donation from last board meeting. It was identified for the Rocks Club, and it's actually for the 4 Club, so you can see that. And we have a couple of other great donations to Science Olympiad and the Steel Drum. And we have Ann Verasso, who is our current part-time nurse, clinic nurse at the high school, is moving to full-time. Shelby Gall resigned, and we are backfilling that position with an aide. So we will go back to having one nurse at the GHS complex, and an aide in that area as well.
The aide becomes a full-time aide.
Aide is a full-time aide, correct.
So we have more coverage.
More coverage.
More coverage throughout the day.
Yes.
A similar, a full-time aide makes about the same salary as a half-time nurse.
Thank you.
So from a fiscal standpoint, it's pretty neutral.
It's great to see the support of the middle school science Olympiad team. Is that still a unfunded, we don't have a stipend for that?
That is correct. That is completely voluntary still.
Great, that's a fantastic program. It's
Yeah.
wonderful that we're making that available.
Yes. And I would also like to send a kudos to Bobby Seidel, who is stepping up as lacrosse coach. I know my daughter is absolutely ecstatic. So,
I've heard similar comments in my household.
yes.
Yeah.
Take the roll, please.
Mr. Janice.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds.
Aye.
Mr. Khan.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
All right, financials first is the monthly financial report for December.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Go through the report fairly quickly. If we take a look at page 4, you'll see the overall fiscal condition has actually improved since the December report, actually over the 4 years by about $400,000. And that is because of one thing, and that is a resolution to an issue with a special needs student in transportation and how we are educating that person. This gives you an idea of, one, how volatile some of this can be, and second, how much compounding there is where one change early on in a 5-year forecast has a compounding effect at the end, and it's about a $400,000 difference over 5 years as far as the spending, and where the child's needs are being met as they need to be. It's a combination of that, and also, we budget very accurately. That is intentional on my part. I don't believe in fluffing the budget and building in spending that we probably don't need. And I've heard of treasurers where every year they get $1 million more. Amazingly, they get $1 million more in their property tax than they were forecasting. Well, it's because they weren't forecasting it. And so I do intentionally build that. And so you do get a lot of volatility that way, but I think that's a much better way of budgeting. It's really painting a true picture of the fiscal condition of the district. But that's what I wanted to illustrate.
We've had this conversation. But he's right. Yes, he's absolutely right. That when you budget accurately and with the right metrics informing it, you are subject to notification of volatility, but I think you're giving a transparent look at the district's finances, and that's critical. Because, yeah, you can build a budget and hide a lot of stuff, but we don't do that.
This budget has integrity.
Yes.
And it's important, and I think we certainly expect that, and the community would expect that as well.
Excellent.
I think we as a board have been definitely working and support the transparency. Yeah, for sure.
Page 5, revenues have grown a whopping 0.1% over last year. There's a fairly sizable jump in real estate taxes, but in reality, about half of that is the drop in other revenues, simply the TIF ending for the Kendall property, and that source of revenue switching from being other revenue to property taxes. So we're not getting very much growth in our revenue, but we were not expecting much growth. You'll see if we skip ahead to page 7, you'll see we weren't expecting much growth because the actual revenue we are at is about 0.4% under where we were expected to be at this point. And again, that is entirely from the one delinquency that we had on one of our large commercial payers that has since been paid, but we have not gotten the money yet. We'll be getting the money for that next month, because we'll start getting the money from late payment. On the expenditure side, total spending is up just over 3% above last year. Remember, I said that would come back down. It had been higher earlier in the year, and that was timing, and it has.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to see that, and you were right.
Yes, and again, if you look at page 8, we're now about 1.5% above estimate. That have been considerably more than that. And I will tell you that the one area that's the furthest over the benefits of $99,000, that will be coming down. I had anticipated an increase in our STRS deductions beginning in January, and they actually went down by $1,000. They did not go up like I was anticipating they would, and so we'll start seeing that $98,000 coming down starting with January. If we look at the cash flow graph on page 9, again, our cash flow through 2017 is right where we expect it to be and above the cash balance policy. Our overall cash on page 10, we are at about $7.6 million of cash balance. That's across all funds. We are nearing the bottom point of our cycle. That will occur at the end of January, before the property taxes start coming in February. Again, we are in a very good spot for where we want to be. As I mentioned, if you take a look at page 11, as I alluded to at the beginning, the comparison to the 5-year forecast, the top portion is what I presented in December. Looking at it now, and you'll see in the bottom right corner, not necessarily the best thing to look at, but you will see it's $400,000 better than it was in December, and is now actually about $1.1 million better than what we had forecast back in October. Again, the other big chunk of that, besides what I talked about earlier, as I mentioned last month, was a sharp increase in our public utility property values. And because there's no reduction factors there, we do get dollar for dollar growth when we see increases there. That is the rest. Yeah, that added several $100,000 onto the forecast as well. The last page I do want to talk about briefly, enrollment update for this year. Coming out of winter break, we usually have both series of withdrawals and new enrollments over winter break with people coming in and out. The net impact of winter break was we added 6 students, which is actually kind of low by historical standards. Last year I think it was closer to 10 or 12 that we added during winter break. So we are now at an enrollment of 2438, which is up 36 students, which is about 1.5% from last year. Again, it's the first noticeable increase we've had since the 2009-10 school year. Looking forward, I am still projecting still continued growth, but slower than this over the next 3 or 4 years. Generally 10 to 15 students a year. There's 1 or 2 years in there where we're looking at being flat, but then we'll have 1 other year we have a fairly significant jump. So we're looking at a potentially large kindergarten class in a couple of years. If we go back through should we talk about that, or as far as staffing, or
Not right now.
okay?
Yeah.
So have ongoing discussions as far as what this may mean for our staffing over the next couple of years with what we know right now.
Great.
Questions?
No. Just a real basic question, Mike. I was looking back at the chart of a balance at the end of the month, right? The cyclical chart at the end of the month, and comparing it to the balance sheet cash reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
Which line matches up there?
Neither.
Okay.
The bar chart is the general operating budget only, and the cash reconciliation is all funds.
Okay.
So the $7.6 million includes the money in the bond fund and some of the other funds. That is not part. The chart on page 9 is just in the operating budget.
Okay.
So.
And the operating budget is not a separate line item in the cash reconciliation because there's accounts within there?
Correct. Because if you look in the cash reconciliation, the amount of money that's in the operating budget, it's part of the first line, the ICS MMA, which is a money market account.
Okay.
Part of that is the general fund, part of it's not.
Okay.
The same with the $250,000, which is our general checking account.
Right.
That, and the ICS demand as well is
All
those
split
are
between
all
the various. Okay.
They're all commingled. Okay. Yeah, so that's why it's like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Big roll.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Our second item is resolution accepting amounts and rates for the year.
Second.
This is something we are required to do each year for the county auditor, is to accept the calculation of the property tax rates for the year. I will confirm I have reconciled them down to the 5th decimal point. And so I am comfortable that they are accurate, the rates are accurate, that we are adopting, and will inform the county that they are accurate, and they can go ahead and be used. Questions?
Take the roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Khan?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye. This time, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session to consider the employment of a public employee or official.
Second.
Me,
You are right. Dr. Cornman?
yeah.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Khan?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
And no action will be taken after the executive session.